bit more seconds to get this going. Just in time, Blue.
Don't
worry, mine will be coming soon.
Mine is asleep under the table.
Oh, Frankie.
Mine only sleep when we're not doing live broadcasts.
Oh my gosh, this morning I was like, oh.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm just pushing this to Facebook, so it'll take us a couple seconds before we get going. But thank you for joining us at such short notice. I know a lot of you have a lot of questions related to Abbott's latest executive order. My name's Anna, and if you have any questions, please use the Q&A window or the chat window. I'm going to make sure the chat is open so you can talk to each other if you want as well. We're here just as a resource right now for you to solve anything we possibly can. And then Kelsey's going to tell us how to get more for our restaurants and bars so that we can survive this. So I'm going to kick it over right now to Dr. Emily Williams-Knight, our president and CEO.
Great. Hi, everyone. I know we've had a lot of conversations as we've been through this about 100-day journey, and we wanted to make ourselves available today, most importantly, just to answer your questions. We know we've received, it feels like now, hundreds of questions and calls since this order came down today. I know as an association, we have been watching the numbers really closely, as we knew at the start that Governor Abbott's always going to make his decisions in data. We don't have to agree or like the decisions, but he is going to go back to data, and none of us can argue that the numbers across Texas are climbing. And we definitely have some cities that are going to run out of hospital beds very soon, and that's nothing that any of us want. While it's really tough today, and we'll get into all the details of this, and I'll have Kelsey, we'll both answer questions along with Joe and Anna, and let you know that this is something that we're going to have to get behind in the short term, and focus our energy on making sure that we continue to message to all of our restaurants. A lot of our restaurants had not gotten past 50% because of the social distancing. So for restaurants to go from 75 to 50 is painful, but with outdoor capacity not being touched, and hopefully our ability to secure cocktails that have been mixed on site to go in the next couple of days, if not sooner, I think that will actually help you move some product with your food. On the bar side, it's absolutely catastrophic. You got little warning. I got a heads up, maybe our association just a little before you. And so while we could feel something coming, we certainly didn't know as well until this morning. But I do know that other states are now following. And I think where we can best serve our energy together collectively is to talk about how do we get you reopened again? How do we ensure the bar promise and social distancing is in effect? And in the short term, continue communications with the governor about different licensing options and food and beverage. And definitely the conversation is not over from our part, but we have to accept that the governor had to act, and I'm glad he did across the state, because we have to slow these numbers down. And I'm all for, if we slow the numbers, we're going to move in a positive direction. And before I turn it to Kelsey, because I think it's really important, this is the best time to talk about the Texas Restaurant Survival Plan. Guys, we're not going to make a pivot. This industry will not survive if we don't get help. We know that the federal side, we want a second round of PPP funding or some type of direct payment relief to this sector that's been absolutely the hardest hit. There's no doubt we are the hardest hit of anyone, but that help's not going to come at least until the end of July, just the way the session's falling. Then at the state level, we're asking for grants, for tax, for delivery that Kelsey will walk through. And now we really need to be serious about doubling down and getting those things. I can't change capacity for you today, but we can take our collective voice and really start to lean into the Texas Restaurant Promise, because our policymakers are going to have to help. They're going to have to step in and help us survive this, because this recovery is nothing like any of us imagined just a couple months ago. So Kelsey, if I want to turn it over to you and just walk maybe through the survival plan, and
Sure.
Then we can get into questions.
Yeah, so Texas Restaurant Survival Plan, again, it's an 8-point plan, and its audience is the state of Texas. We'll continue to push another round of PPP and relief at the federal level. But given the schedule, as Emily mentioned, it's really imperative that the state steps in now. So the 8 points, I'm just going to read them quickly so we're all on the same page. And Anna provided the link in the chat feature, so please make sure you're grabbing that from online as well. The first is to create and fund the Food Service Industry Recovery Fund, the FERF as we like to call it. We've asked for $390 million, which sounds like a lot until you consider the fact that the state got $6 billion. And we're the hardest hit industry, the second largest private sector employer, critical to actually feeding families. So we think $390 million is a more than reasonable ask. And some key points on this, it's really about investing in the front lines of our economy. We've got this money from the federal government. It has to be spent on COVID-19 expenses that we're not budgeted for, so it can't be used to just plug holes in our budget. And it has to be spent by the end of the year. And Treasury has made it very clear that providing grants to businesses that were closed and impacted by COVID-19 is a perfectly acceptable use of this money. So rather than spend this on sort of more government programs, unemployment, let's spend it on our small businesses who truly keep our economy running. So that's really our message on the Food Service Industry Recovery Fund. Also, a key piece to this is that it's really about helping businesses pivot to be successful in this post-COVID world. We know that things like social distancing and sanitation are here for the long haul. And we know that you don't have the revenue, the money on hand right now to make changes to your business after you were closed for over 6 weeks and are dealing with every other problem under the sun. So that's what this grant program is about. It's about getting money into your hands so that you can make the investments you need to keep employees on staff, to do more to-go orders, that sort of thing. So that's number one. Number two, award a workforce development grant to deploy high-quality COVID-19 health and sanitation training to restaurants, bars, and their employees. The great news on this is we're already halfway there, maybe more than halfway there on this one. Just this week, we rolled out the Texas Restaurant Promise Certification Program with our friends at Dallas College and a closer look. We've gotten a grant from the Texas Workforce Commission to cover free training and evaluation for 500 restaurants, 2,500 restaurant employees. It's a really important step forward. We think we're the first in the nation to offer this kind of comprehensive training program. And so, like I said, we're more than halfway there on this one. We're going to keep going back to the Workforce Commission, which has been a great partner. We've already put them on notice that we will be coming to them asking for more money so that more of you can access this really valuable program for absolutely no cost. So that's number two. Number three is continue and expand the regulatory waivers that allow restaurants to sell retail bulk items, sealed containers of alcohol to go with food orders, and prepared food in grocery stores. Emily touched on this one earlier. We think we're really close to getting the expansion for mixed beverages that are mixed and sealed on site. We just continue to emphasize with the governor's office that the timing for this could not be more critical as we see, in dining sales decline due to the spike. And now that we're going backwards on occupancy and bars are closed completely, this is going to be even more important. And you did see in the executive order today where Governor Abbott closed bars, he did include specific language making clear that they can remain open for to-go food and alcohol orders, which is a critical clarification that we were really happy to see despite the otherwise very, upsetting news. So that's number three. Number four is provide tax and fee relief to restaurants and bars that are negatively impacted by COVID-19 and government mandated closures. We should get some word from TABC soon on providing relief on the liquor license and permit fees. In fact, we'll follow up with TABC on that today because it really should be any day now that we get some help on that point. We've already received positive feedback from the governor's office and the agency. We really just have to have TABC work out the logistics with their super antiquated software. So we're working on that. Continue to reach out to the comptroller's office if you have trouble paying your mixed beverage and sales taxes. But we're going to keep working towards a long-term solution on that front too, because we know when you're bringing in no money, paying taxes is just a slap in the face on top of everything else, frankly. So we will keep working on that. 5 is enact liability protections for businesses, including food service businesses that demonstrate reasonable good faith efforts to comply with COVID-19 protocols and industry-specific health and safety guidance. We all know how important this is to y'all. There's so much uncertainty right now. And the last thing that you can think about or deal with is the possibility of a frivolous lawsuit. The good news is we're getting good traction at the federal level on this. Senator John Cornyn, one of our local senators, and many others are really understanding the urgency of this. And we're also working with partners in lots of different industries as well. I know NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, is very engaged on this topic. Retailers are engaged on this topic. So this is one where the whole business community can really lock arms and insist that we get something done. We don't really care if it's at the federal or the state level. We just need it to happen soon. So that's our message to all of our policy leaders. Number 6 is prohibit landlords from evicting or foreclosing restaurants or bars for non-payment of rent or mortgages during the COVID-19 crisis and recovery. This is another one that will really be hammering hard right now, just given the timing of reduced occupancy or closing for bars right now on top of everything else makes this point that much more important. So we will continue to advocate for that as well. 7 is suspend any new state or local government mandates set to come into effect for food service businesses over the next 120 days. Again, we've had some traction on this. We were able to slow down a state rulemaking process that just did not make any sense right now given the crisis. The agency agreed and backed off, which was a great win. We're engaged on the local level. Some cities and counties have done this proactively, which is great. But it's something we need to continue to monitor because, as we all know, our local governments can get really creative with the small business regulations, and we just can't afford to divert our attention to that right now. Last but not least is prohibit third-party delivery companies from charging restaurants predatory and absorbent fees. Anna's smiling because she's particularly passionate about this one. We know that as pickup and delivery become an increasingly important part of your business, you cannot afford to make all of these sales where Uber or Grubhub or DoorDash actually make the entire profit. So this is something we will continue to talk to our policymakers about. We're hearing great things on the federal level. There's a lot of interest in addressing this issue, but we're willing to work with any level of government to address this. We need transparency at the bare minimum so that you know exactly what you're dealing with when you get into one of these arrangements, but also we need protection on the fee end so that it's not predatory. So those are the 8 points of the promise. You will hear us at TRA talking about this in the press as much as we possibly can, in social media, to the public. So just please help us to spread the word on this, because we have a moment right now where people are paying attention to this issue. News outlets in particular want to know what this means for restaurants, because everyone has a local restaurant or bar that they love and they don't want to see close right now. And so it's really our platform to say, these are the things we have to have in a timely fashion to make it through this crisis.
Thank you, Kelsey. So we've got a couple questions. The lights in here keep doing weird things. The first one is from Pete Cortez down in the chat window. Thank you, Pete, and thank you for being here. He says, first, thank you for all your support and advocacy. A second round of PPP would be great, but it needs to allow businesses who received PPP in the first round to access a second loan. As you know, the first round was intended to bridge 8 weeks, and we are way beyond that.
Absolutely, Pete. And that would be, there's a couple options. One would be to go after a recovery fund. That would be different, right? So a new recovery fund that would be specific to the sector. I think what we are trying to position is that first and foremost, yes, you would be eligible for a second PPP loan. So that would be a fundamental change. Our thinking today, with what we know what's happening up in DC with our federal team, is that it's going to be easier likely to get something passed where we already have a vehicle in place. So because we already have the Paycheck Protection Program, we have the Flexibility Act that we helped to pass, refunding that and allowing individual companies to have a second, try at that money to extend out even through the end of the year could be life-changing. Frankly, it could help a lot of restaurants survive. And so for us, we think that's the right mechanism, and we think we can get enough bipartisan support to push that over the line. There's no doubt that we'll use the setback today to just really, as Kelsey just said, and Anna, we're shining a light on the fact that this is not sustainable. The path that our sector is on is not sustainable, and the number of businesses closing could reach 30%. And so if we don't have this federal money, where else would you put it if you were an elected official today than back into small business and back into an industry that was the hardest hit with 3 times the jobs loss of anyone else? We need to get employees back, and we can't do that if our restaurants aren't operating at capacity. So I think I feel very strongly in federal support, and you know what we did last time, we're going to do it again, and we're going to get all of our federal elected officials. And the good news for Texans is our federal officials have been incredibly supportive. They even call us to say, what else can we be doing? So as Kelsey mentioned, either Senator Cornyn's bill, where we're trying to get the use of nutritional benefits in restaurants, to going back to a second look at the Paycheck Protection Program, to getting liability coverage. As an association, we tend to be state focused historically. We are very much state, local, and of course federally focused now. So we think today really is almost a turning point where we've got to be adamant about getting that next round of federal support.
Great. I'm going to take a couple of the questions that are coming in from Facebook related to the order today before we take other questions. So one of them is a little bit of clarification. Will guests be able to sit at bars inside a restaurant?
Yes. That did not change. At a restaurant, customers can be served at a bar as long as they are 6 feet from other parties, from staff, and from bar top items like glassware. So that continues to be the rule.
Emily, this is really for you. This has come up a lot ever since the order came out this morning. We're hearing from a lot of bars who really want to be able to use their patios. So what is your thought there?
Yeah, so right now a bar is a bar, whether they have a patio or not, in the way you read the order. And so the team on this that you're looking at has had some dialogue, and we're currently engaged in some dialogue with the governor's office to get additional clarification. Shutting down completely, in particular when you have food and beverage, is a big portion of your revenue, is a case we're trying to make as we speak. So right now, whether you have a patio or not, if you fall under that bar order, you need to close or be closed now since 12 o'clock today. What we're trying to get is to see if there's any window when it comes to food and beverage that we can make it slightly more liberal, to have more of these entities that operate more like restaurants open. I can't promise you anything. We always tell you the truth, but we are certainly making a very strong pitch. And the good news is the governor's office is engaged with us. So we'll come back to you. But right now, even with a patio, it won't matter. You need to close if you're a bar.
Next question. What about getting relief in the purchase of PPE supplies? Kelsey, I know we've talked about this. They're having a hard time getting what they need, and they could use some discounts and services.
Yeah, that's one of the things that the Food Service Industry Recovery Fund money could be used for. There could also be tax deferrals and incentives around that as well. I will say some of our local governments are really leading on this issue. I know San Antonio and Bexar County have done various sort of PPE drives and support initiatives. We have added to the county tracker, which many of you are familiar with, a second page that deals with local grants, and that contains websites for most of your major cities and counties, the sort of COVID help for businesses websites that they've created. And so that's a good place to look to see if there's opportunity to get low or no cost PPE in your area. But it's certainly a challenge. Anna also posted our COVID resource page where we're trying to do a lot of the legwork for you to source reliable PPE providers. So please use that as well.
Great. And what about some clarification on 10 people per party at a table?
Yeah, that hasn't changed either. So that seems to be one of the rumors that's gone viral, is the table size. That has not changed. So it is still 10 people per table and no more. That has not changed inside a restaurant.
Great.
Yeah, I think the big thing to remember is that it's just the occupancy and bars being open or not that's changed. So all of the existing rules about social distancing, about who counts towards the occupancy cap, sanitation, party size, all of that stays the same.
Great. Okay, I'm going to go over here to the Q&A window. We have a question from John Dante. He's asking if we were funded with PPP prior to the revision, do we have until the end of the year to use the PPP funds?
Yes, you actually do. You can pick an 8-week period within that window to use that money. So you no longer had to use those funds by June 30th was most everyone's cutoff date. And that was extended a number of weeks in the Paycheck Flexibility Act and allows you to use those funds over a much longer period of time. The challenge we have is that we didn't, if you think about, we secured that act in some cases hours before people's money was going to hit that 8 weeks, and they would have not had a forgivable loan. So many came out of the gates and spent the money because they knew they only had 8 weeks. And so once it got extended, they didn't have any money to extend. And that's where I think the rub is, that those that maybe took a loan later, or at this point, they still have a couple days to secure a loan, they benefit from all the new flexibility. And that's the reason I really argue we need a second round of funding, because it was meant to be 8 weeks through the crisis to keep people employed and to keep rent paid. This crisis has now crossed 100 days. And I think one of the biggest challenges we have for all of you is Kelsey likes to say, there's no bottom, there's no end in sight. Nobody can tell us when this is going to get better. And I think that lack of certainty, the lack of clear guidelines on a consistent basis, as much as the association can step out and lead you through this, all of that just adds up to confusion and pain. And so for us, we need that second round, but certainly if you've not exhausted that 8-week period, you can continue using that money. And I encourage you to. It's just most people used it already, and that's where they're starting to feel the pinch.
I'm sensing a lot of frustration from some of the comments we're seeing, obviously, on social media, Emily, and we have this broadcast going to Facebook right now. And there's one question that I think has been said a lot lately about why is Governor Abbott ignoring protests or big gatherings? And, of course, there's been increased testing, and it feels as if Abbott is punishing our industry, and that increasing from 50 to 75 is not what caused COVID numbers to increase. Maybe there's some reassurance you can give, but we sense a lot of frustration with a lot of you and totally understand.
Yeah, first, I did a nightly address for 2 nights, and I could sense that something was going to change. I had no heads up. I certainly had a heads up this morning before it was public, but I just knew, and I could feel it. And I think it's a couple of things. One, I think that Governor Abbott is using everything he can right now to ensure that these numbers start to decline. And we were the only industry at 75%. I think it's an important fact. So we went from 50 to 75, and nobody else did. I don't think anyone actually believes that COVID is coming from restaurants. We don't have the evidence of that. At the same time, when you look at contact tracing data across the state, we need to be sure that every single city and county is using contact tracing data and asking appropriate questions like, have you been to a lake or to a mass gathering? Have you been to a park? I don't believe all those questions are being answered. And so in some cases, some of the contact tracing data could be pointing to sectors that maybe aren't indeed the problem. And so that's something that I think we have to evaluate as well. I don't feel as much targeted it as I do about needing more support, right? The 75 to 50 for restaurants is another blow, but what Kelsey walked through is the real issue, which is we have been for over 6 weeks now asking for state support on very key issues that matter to saving the industry. And I think we need to use this moment to get that done. Like you, I go to plenty of retail stores where people are piled on top of each other. They're also at 50%. I was just out yesterday and there was a massive birthday party in a park. I think that the tubing and the lakes and those types of events, closing those down today will also help, because we've received a lot of calls about those activities, and everyone doing their part when it comes to washing your hands and staying 6 feet apart and wearing a face covering. But it certainly feels kind of why me? And I think, we have 2 options. We can fight this, which certainly as a team and as membership we've talked about, is this something that we want to fight? Or we can lean in and get through this period and this setback, get additional support, use this moment to get additional support, and then move our industry forward. And I think that's the path we have to take. I know that I can share with you in confidence that the calls and communications that we have with the governor's team, even this morning's call, this was not a call they wanted to make. Honestly, but from the start, we said, if the data looks to be in a certain way, we are a very big footprint across the state, that this may be something that happens. And I think that's the result. But I don't feel that there is an intentional targeting of the sector at all. I do think that when we get to reopen, everyone's commitment to social distancing and every bar is going to be critical. It's really tough, guys, to see so many people doing the right thing and then receive pictures of those that aren't. I can't defend photos that show people elbow to elbow on top of each other in bars. I can't. I can tell you that we'll keep getting the message out on the bar promise, but that's been really hard for me to defend. And the sad part is the majority are incredible business owners that now we need to help get through this. We need to save the bars. We just do. They're a big piece of the social element, but that's been really hard. But as much hurt as you have, I'm going to ask you please to help us put that into action and to get the pieces and the things that are going to help you save your business. That's where we need to put our energy now, is to getting the other pieces that we need to survive. I was certainly taken aback this morning. I got mad for about 10 minutes and then I went into full action with this team here who's so committed. And we really feel like it's a moment to get curbside expansion of that alcohol waiver. I was very clear. We need that now. There's no reason we don't. We've cleared every hurdle. That will help. It won't save you. Liability protection will help. Rent relief will help, right? All these things will add up. It's not just one silver bullet that's bringing this industry to its knees. So I know you're mad. I trust me, I've heard you loud and clear. That's the joy of us sitting in these seats, but I really want to turn that into action and in proaction to try to get us through this. That's the best use of our energy right now.
Great. One person on Facebook is asking if we continue to see the numbers go up, the number of cases of COVID go up, will we be pushed back down to 25%?
You know, I don't think we have any indication of that today. Currently, restaurants, we'll speak to restaurants right now, and this answer was really about where everyone else is, right? Retail, companies, everyone's now sitting in the same arena. So I think that my hope, and I mean this, there's so much that happens outside of business. And if you're going out and you're socializing in large groups and you don't have your face covered and you're doing the things that don't fit the 3 things that the entire nation is asking people to do, then we are going to be in a situation where if hospital beds get to the point where we can't care for people, there will have to be more ratcheting back. I'm not the governor, but if you all of a sudden can't care for your citizens, you're going to have to do something. And that's why I think we need to look at this as individuals as much as we are business owners. We all outside in our daily lives have to step up and do what's being asked. We know it works. You can question the science all you want. I've got a box full of email telling me that I'm stupid because masks don't work. Well, I'm going to go with the people who say they do, which are the medical experts right now, and put your mask on and let's get through this. But I think if we do, we will. The blessing about Texas is that as soon as these numbers start to turn, guys, we will get to open again, right? We're not going to be in a long delay. The governor we were one of the first to open. That's not his mantra. But right now, if Houston's going to run out of beds in a week, he has to do something.
Right.
I want to jump into and just say we're also incredibly frustrated when we see the photos of the big pool party or the birthday party in the park or the big parade or protest or whatever, and people aren't wearing a mask. Please know that we see that and we're incredibly frustrated by that too. We know that is going to result in the businesses that are doing the right thing feeling the hurt and that's not fair. So we will continue to talk about that. We will continue to emphasize with the press that restaurants and bars, the vast majority of them have gone above and beyond and are doing everything they can to keep people safe. So please know that we know that and we will continue to carry that message.
Yeah, and as Emily said, it's very important to, I don't know why my microphone does that weird thing. I don't mean you need to call each other out publicly if you see another bar owner that who wasn't doing the right thing, or a restaurant owner who allowed a very crowded patio, but maybe privately get a hold of them, tell them, hey, you know what, if you keep doing this, it's going to ruin it for everyone else. And we have to hold each other accountable, not just as individuals, but as business owners too. Okay, rant over. Question from Pat in the Q&A window. What is the status of the IRS ruling that any forgiven PPP loan proceeds used for payroll, et cetera, would not be allowed as an expense for income tax purposes?
Oh, I just got, you know what, if you don't mind taking Pat's contact info, someone else asked a very similar question that the national team had a tax expert weigh in on that I can forward.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I don't know, Pat, but if you could just give us your email, I'm happy to forward that over.
Cool. Got it.
And the forgiveness rules that just were posted this week, Saturday night they came out. There's a snippet in there, but we did get more clarity from the tax team, and I'm happy to forward that to you.
Thanks, Emily. And just as a reminder, bars were closed at noon today. Restaurants, when is their
Monday. And that was something we pushed hard for. So it was going to be today, but we know there's a number of reservations and there were a number of parties and things planned that meet the requirements today. So we have through the weekend, and then Monday is when we'll ratchet down to 50%.
Is it Monday at a certain time?
Midnight.
Midnight. So you have all day Monday.
Great. So you can get all your reservations in.
Well, I think it's 12. I think it's midnight going into Sunday, right? 12:01 a.m. on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Or on June 29th.
All right, we'll clear that up tonight in tonight's email. Okay, we did get Pat's email address. Thank you very much. I'm scrolling through. Some really great comments on Facebook. Not a lot of questions, but Lee is pointing out that we are the only group trained to deal with germs daily. It's very, very true.
Absolutely.
Yep. COVID-19 is not a foodborne illness, and we are experts at food and safety.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We say that a lot.
Oh, here's a question from earlier. Will the governor extend the CARES Act for unemployment insurance?
So it's actually going to be a federal decision. And so it's going to come down from the federal government. There's a lot of discussion right now on both sides of the aisle about what this means. As everyone knows, the extra $600 per week has made it difficult for some businesses, not just restaurants and bars, to bring their employees back. At the same time, with so much uncertainty, it's given these unemployed workers, in some cases, some type of stability. But there's two schools of thought. One is that it would end abruptly on the 30th of July or the last day of July, or it could take another form or fashion. My gut on this, and we talk about this daily with our national team, is that it's not going to fall off a cliff, that I don't think it'll extend through the end of the year, but I think there will be some form. It may be go back to work and get an extra 300 or ratchet down the 600 per week as you go back to work. But there's a lot of push to get people back to work because that's how our economy is going to start to grow. Mm-hmm. And so I think you'll see that, but I'm thinking the way this is moving, and especially with numbers starting to climb across not just Texas, but many states that opened, I think that you're going to see hopefully a bipartisan solution that would start to ratchet it down, but I don't expect it to go away completely at the end of July.
Yeah. Thank you, Kelsey, for posting that. Okay. The good question from the Facebook side, why were bars not given the same timeline as restaurants?
Couldn't answer that. It's a great question. I don't know. I think that if you look at potentially the impact that the bars could have through the weekend, as a busy weekend going into a holiday, but in my discussions, I didn't address that with the governor. It was clear the decision had been made, and that it was, we are now going to be carrying the message, but I don't know why the two were considered differently.
Yeah, no, Ali, as far as like you had a comment here about, are you seriously saying we push for restaurants to have until Monday because there were people who had reservations? No, we were told.
Yeah, no, I wish we had that authority. What came up from that was the idea that we're telling restaurants they can use their reservations through the weekend. The governor didn't give us that by any means. So sorry if that was misunderstood. I think that may have been part of their thinking if you think about why they changed restaurants versus bars. But no, we didn't get any indication. We just were today at noon. And we know the Florida governor has just followed, and we expect the North Carolina governor to follow as well. So this is not isolated just to Texas when it comes to bars. But yeah, no, we weren't treated differently for any special reason. It's just what came down. But what we've messaged to our restaurants is they have a chance to get through the weekend. But then obviously now to be prepared for Monday, they have to be back to 50%.
Yeah. Wow. If we had that kind of power, we'd have a lot of other things already done. So don't worry. We have a question on the chat too about what determines the 51%. And I know this is something we have been talking about since we got the order this morning. So Kelsey or Joe, you want to give the update there?
Yeah, so we're talking to the governor's office about this. The executive order as it stands today, and I'm just going to pull up the exact language. If a restaurant has less than 51% of their gross receipts from the sale of alcoholic beverages, then you're a restaurant and you can keep your dining room open, but you have to go to 50% for Monday. If you have 51% or more of your gross receipts from the sale of alcohol, you were technically considered a bar under the current standard. We are talking to the governor's office about clarifying that because we know that it's not consistent with the food and beverage certificate language, and frankly, just everyone in the industry's conception of what is a bar versus a restaurant. We know if you've got that food and beverage certificate, you have a permanent kitchen, you sell entrees. So we know that that's what we mean when we say restaurant. And so we're hopeful. Again, we can't promise anything, as Emily said before, but we have made the ask. And if we get better news or any news on that topic, we'll certainly share it. But we know that there's a lot of sports bars and just kind of restaurants that are kind of hybrids that this could have huge ramifications for. And that's the message that we're sharing with the governor's office. It's about keeping these businesses open, keeping them serving food to their customers, and keeping their employees employed. So we know it's a big issue.
Everyone that is on the chat right now, either joining us on Facebook or on Zoom, if you are the owner or manager of one of those kind of hybrid restaurants that falls within that frame where you sell 51% is alcohol sales, but you do consider yourself more of a restaurant, if you don't mind listing the name of your restaurant and what city you're in the chat, that would be really helpful, just so we have those names. Otherwise, Joe and I are going to spend all afternoon digging through TABC records, and that's not fun, and we'd rather be more effective. So if you don't mind listing your name and your restaurant name, or if you know of one that is kind of one of those hybrid models, we'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, and it helps for us to be able to put a face to this with the governor's office, right? These are real businesses with real employees, and so that's really what this is about.
Exactly.
And to make it really super simple for all y'all, if you have the red TABC sticker, that's what we're looking for right now. So just to give you an example, Papados in Houston has that. So we've already got them on the list. So we're looking for, if you are a restaurant that has one of those red stickers, can you just shoot us your name in the chat? Would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't see any more current unanswered questions, but I'll give people a couple seconds if they want to ask something new. In the meantime, Kelsey, can you talk a little bit about, because we've gone over the survival plan, on the survival plan page is a link to go and advocate. Can you explain how that works for people?
Yeah, we've got a point to action P2A system. And so it's really easy. You click the link, you enter in your address, and then we've already got a template letter that will be sent to your representatives, which is key because elected officials are particularly interested in what their voters have to say, as well as Governor Abbott, who of course represents all of us. So please take 2 seconds to do that. It really takes, I would say, 2 minutes. And it's just incredibly important that they hear directly from you. They get, it's one thing when Emily and I tell them what the impact is. It's another thing when they're hearing it straight from the people who will be impacted.
Exactly. All right. Oh, here we go. Okay. Oh, we answered this earlier, Crystal, but we can go over it again. What is a possibility, or how likely do we think we might be pushed back down to 25%?
You want to answer it again?
Well,
I'm happy to. I mean, our job is, right, to get much information out as we can. So, our hope is that won't happen. I think that as we stated earlier, we went from 75 to 50. We're in line with the rest of the industry now, the rest of the industries across the state. Our hope is that we will be here for long enough for the numbers to start to decline. The rafting and tubing and those things all being closed, parties over 100 now having to be approved at the local level. I think all of those kind of gatherings, that's going to help us as well. And so it's not just restaurants and bars, there's other elements. And then every citizen in Texas doing their part. My hope is that we won't go backwards. If we get to a point, and this would be, again, Emily Knight's opinion of TRA, not the governor's opinion, if there's a point where our hospital bed capacity goes to where we cannot take care of people in Texas, then I'd expect that to be a broad decision by the governor. We're very lucky. He's pro-business. He doesn't want to have this happen. This was not an easy call today, I can tell you, speaking with his office. But at this point, the numbers are increasing so rapidly that the idea of people staying home is becoming more important. And so I think if we do our part, I do think we'll be okay. But we all got to do our part. That's just how it's going to work. And I think if you do see those huge parties and those huge gatherings, you can scroll your own social media and see the number now popping up where you see, I had a 21-person birthday party, 20 people are now sick, right? We know that restaurants aren't starting this. And yes, it is sometimes hard to take the brunt of this. We are resilient, but as I said earlier, we are going to use this to get the support we need because we can't take any more. There's nothing else you can do to this sector right now. Nothing. I mean, we've been through the worst of anyone. And I would say that to any person asking me. And right now, we need the state to lean in and save us because it is about saving us now because we've lost too many businesses already and we're going to lose more with continued restrictions. And so that's where we have to stand today.
I think that's pretty much it right now. I don't see any other questions. Thank you guys for joining us. There will be more information coming out from us this evening. If you're not signed up for Emily's nightly emails, you can get that now, even if you're a non-member, at least until mid-July. If you go onto our website, txrestaurant.org, and click the top bar, there's like an orange bar, the coronavirus guidance page. That's where you can go and sign up for the nightly emails. You can always reach us at communications@txrestaurant.org. And if you have a question from the media or media is calling you and wants to do an interview and you want some talking points, reach out to us as well. We have a list of talking points available for you. We just want you to be as prepared as possible to help tell this story. So Emily, any final words before we say goodbye?
No, I mean, I would just say, I would just channel your frustration to be the voice with the association and help us make the moves that need to happen to help you. Trust me, sometimes it's the worst job in the world to sit in the seat the last 100 days on many days. It's also the best job because I think we can continue to try to help get the right things done. We hope to get you good news on alcohol. I really do. Kelsey and I both know. I mean, I don't know what else we could do. I think we've made the best possible case. And then getting things like delivery and liability and the things we've talked about, just please channel your energy with us to tell that story and know that it's the collective voice that's unstoppable. So we encourage you to do that. And I'll just say I'm sorry because I don't run one of your restaurants and I certainly don't run a bar. I can't imagine how you're feeling. And we have tremendous empathy, but it's tough. It's really hard. And if we could fix it, we would fix it. I promise you we would do anything we could to fix it. So let's work together and get as much done as we can. And we'll just take it day by day. And please do your part. Continue trying to eat out, get takeout, wear your face covering, stay away from other people. And let's hope that in a week we're having a different conversation. It's likely going to be 2 weeks until we visit again on this issue. We've got to see the numbers turn, but let's hold everyone accountable to doing their part and we'll get through this.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks.